Hey everybody, it's Christian from Human Risk, and as we come to the end of the festive period and approach the new year, 3 stories that I've discovered concerning the same human risk related topic that I just want to quickly highlight to you. And this relates to something called third party or vendor risk. So this is when companies or organizations outsource an activity to another party. There's a risk associated with that. And that risk simply is that they might do something you might not approve of, and it's being done in your name. So here are 3 examples of that happening. The first relates to Michael Bloomberg, the US presidential candidate. He was found to have been using prison labor to make outbound phone calls to potential voters. Nothing illegal, but it's not a great look to be using forced labor, if you like, to make calls for election purposes. Doesn't look great at all. Second example is Tesco, the UK's largest retailer. They were found to have been using forced labour in Shanghai, people in prisons to make their Christmas cards. This was discovered because a girl who opened a pack of Christmas cards in the UK discovered someone had written in the card saying that they were a prisoner forced to make these Christmas cards on behalf of Tesco, naming an FT journalist that they wanted them to contact. So this has become a story in its own right. Again, like Bloomberg, Tesco denied all knowledge and has cut off the use of that supplier, but it's not a good look for them to be using prison labour to make Christmas cards. And the third example comes from my former employer, the Bank of England. They had a third-party supplier that was providing audio services to the bank, basically providing backup facilities for audio feeds from the bank's press conferences. Now, the bank is very critical when it comes to market movements. They set interest rates, for example, and therefore, if you can get that information a little bit ahead of everybody else, which is what was happening with this audio feed, there is an advantage to be had. So very embarrassing for them that a newspaper in the UK discovered that certain people were using the audio feed in a way that it wasn't intended to get a slight advantage, which enabled them to potentially make profits off it. So the Bank of England has had to report itself to the other financial services regulator in the UK. Not a great look when you're responsible for the stability and good functioning of the financial markets. So what all those 3 stories illustrate are the challenges around third-party risk that we face nowadays. If you get somebody else to do something on your behalf, there is a risk they do it in a way that you don't want or that's embarrassing to you. Now, of course, you can manage that by dint of contract, but just managing to a contract isn't enough. The part of the reason that you might outsource to people is they know more about a topic than you do. Usually it's because it's cheaper for them to do it, but sometimes it's because they know more about the topic than you do. They're experts at it. And of course, if they're experts at it, they may have their own ways of doing things that you haven't thought of before. So managing this third-party risk becomes critical because if it's being done in your name, you need to take responsibility for it, whether or not you've done it. It's not good enough to simply outsource to a third party and say you knew nothing about it. That doesn't work if you're a regulated industry, but it doesn't work anyway if you're somebody that is trying to operate in the public domain. It's fine for people to do in their own private domain to outsource to someone else because there's no reputational risk associated with it. But if you're a company or an organization with a public profile, you're going to want to manage that very, very carefully. This is human risk relevant because the decisions that are made by the third party are always taken by people. So you need to not just think about human risk within your own organization, but also the human risk of organizations that you are outsourcing tasks to. And that can be quite challenging because you can't manage that necessarily by contract. In the same way that trying to manage a compliance program internally with a strict set of rules and without thinking outside those rules and thinking about other risks, you are liable to have problems on your hands. So managing third-party suppliers just by dint of a contract, quite a tough thing to do, and it's a human risk challenge of the 21st century that I think we're going to return to very, very soon. Thanks for watching.